recording. Okay, so we are starting chapter 5, and we just did some review on some fractions. So it says, activity 1, it says, work with a partner and use the collection of objects, and these are the objects they're talking about, calculators, okay, and compasses and protractors. And it says there are blank graphing calculators to protractors. How many graphing calculators do you see? 5. Okay. How many there's 5 graphing calculators. How many protractors are there? 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so it's 5 to 7. And there are blank protractors. 7. 2. How many graphing calculators? 5. So we're just reversing it. Then it says there are blank compasses to protractors. So let me start pulling some sticks here. Miss Werner, this one right here is what we're talking about. Okay, there are blank compasses to protractors. How many compasses are there? And protractors? 7. Okay, nicely done. Put up 20 points. Miss Gossage, next one right here. There are blank graphing calculators to compasses. How many graphing calculators are there? 5. And how many compasses? 4. Okay. This is pretty simple. You guys can see how that works. And then finally the last one, I'll put up 20 points, honey. The last one, there are blank protractors, which is 4, to total objects. What's the total?
Of all of them?
All of them, yeah. Total objects.
16.
I heard somebody say, what was it?
16.
16. There are 4 protractors to 16 total objects. And then it says right here, it says the number of graphing calculators is 5 to the total number of objects, 16. All right. So let's move down a little bit here. Going to the next page here. Okay. And then it says, work with a partner. It says, you mix different amounts of paint to create new colors. Write a statement that describes the relationship between the amounts of paint in each diagram. Okay. And so when they ask you to show the relationships, a really good way to do it is what they've done here, which is you're simply drawing some squares. So if those 3 squares represent, I don't know, let's say palm trees, and these 5 squares here represent pine trees, it would be 3 to 5. Or I might write 3 to 5, or I might write 3 colon to 5. Which is the same thing. All those mean the same thing. They're talking about ratios. All right? So you can see here in A, it says there's 1, 2, 3, 4 parts blue to 3 parts green. And in B here, the orange, there's 2 parts orange to 3 parts yellow. And they ask you down below here, it says, I'm going back to A, it says there are 4 parts blue for every 3 parts green. And then for B, again, there are 2 parts for every 3 parts of yellow. All right? Again, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. You guys should be okay with that. For number 4 here, I'm looking at A, and it says for every 3 boys standing in line, there are 4 girls. And it says use a table or diagram to represent the relationship. Well, we're going back to what I was just talking about a couple minutes ago. I could do 1, 2, 3, and then there's 3 boys for every 4 girls. All right, so that would represent the relationship. Let's move down a little bit further here. This is important. It says a ratio is a comparison of two quantities. And the ratios can be part to whole, or whole to part comparisons. So I'm looking at this first example here, and it says there's 2 red crayons to every 6 blue crayons. Well, let's say I have a red crayon right here. Okay, here's my red crayon. And then I have a blue crayon. 1, 2, you have to wait. 3. Okay, let's say there's 3 crayons. What if my red crayon was cut in half or broken in half? Okay, then I could say there's 1/2 of a red crayon for every 3 blue crayons. All right. So that's what they're talking about when they say it could be part to part or part to whole. So we're talking about a half a crayon versus a whole crayon. All right. Example 1. Let's go a little bit further here. It says the coins, there's 6 pennies to 7 quarters. So the ratio is 6 to 7, and this is what I wrote a couple minutes ago, or 6 to 7, it's using a colon. It means the same thing. Let's drop down a little bit further. It says on your own. In example 1, write the ratio of dimes to pennies. I'm not worried about that. Looking at number 2 here, it says the graph shows the favorite ice cream toppings of several students. Use the ratio of language to compare the number of students who favor peanuts to the total number of students. Well, let's take a look at this for a moment. First off, what's the total number of students? 9, so 4 and 1 is 5. 5 and 5 is 10, plus 9 more for the bananas. That would be what? 19. So the total number would be 19. How many of them prefer peanuts? 5. So it would be 5 to 19. Or you could write it 5 to 19. Or you could write 5 over 19. Mr. Lasori, question?
Is it always the smaller number first?
Not always. No. Not always. It just depends on what you're talking about. But no, not always.
It's like what it's out of. Like,
because it could be, let's say, how many students prefer strawberries to the students that prefer coconuts. So it would be 4 to 1. So the smaller number is not always first. All right?
Like however they ask you to put it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's drop down to the next page here. It says using a tape diagram. These little squares that I've drawn and you guys are probably familiar with those, you probably did some of those last year, they call them tape diagrams. Okay, so the ratio of your monthly allowance to your friend's monthly allowance is 5 to 3. And the monthly allowances total $40. How much is each allowance? So in this one, if each part, if the total is 40, what would one part represent? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many times does 5 go into 40?
4 times, no.
8
20, oh, I mean.
How many times does 5 go into 40?
8.
8 times. So each one of those squares would represent $8. Right? Because you may get questions like that. All right. Let's see here. Looking at example 3. Use the tape diagram. If you separate 42 bulbs of garlic into two groups, one for planting and one for cooking, you will plant 3 bulbs for every 4 bulbs that you will use for cooking. Each bulb has about 8 cloves. About how many cloves will you plant? Well, if each one has about 8, then you're going to be doing some multiplication there, and they explain it there in the example. The 7 parts represent 42. So each part represents 42 divided by 7, or 6 bulbs. All right. Let's see here. Let's do the first exercises. Here's what I want you guys to do. The ratio of vowels to consonants in a word is 5 to 7. There are more vowels. Are there more vowels or consonants in the word? So the order matters, because remember that the way they describe it, the ratio of vowels, so the first number is the vowels to consonants, and so the second number would be consonants. So you should be able to answer that question. Number 2, you are comparing apples to oranges in a fruit bowl. Is the ratio 2 to 3 as the same as 3 to 2? That's kind of confusing because, well, it says actually you're comparing apples to oranges. And if you change it from oranges to apple, along with reversing the ratio, that would be fine. But if you change the ratio without changing what you're comparing, apples to oranges or oranges to apples, then it would matter. So I'll let you guys put that in your own words. You can do number 2. Number 3 you can do, which one doesn't belong. Number 4, it says use a table or diagram to represent the relationship between the two quantities. So you can do little squares if you want, or rectangles. So you could do number 4. You could do 5, 6. It says write the ratio and explain what the ratio means. So, and you can do number 7. Let me see something here.
Also, this is paid.
So look at number 7 here. It says basketballs to soccer balls. It says write the ratio. So what is the ratio of basketballs? How many basketballs do we see right there?
6.
6 to how many soccer balls? 4. Okay. Then what does it say? It says explain what the ratio means. So for number 7, 6 is the number of basketballs. And 4
is the number of soccer balls.
Is the number of soccer balls. Okay. So that's how you do number 7. Just did it for you. So that gives you an idea how you should do also 8 and 9. And let's move down to the bottom. Want you guys to use the table to write the ratios. So they're talking about this table right here. Drama to movies, comedies to movies, movies to action, and movies to dramas. So you would just write the ratios. And then finally, number 14, it says the table shows the number of stamps in a stamp collection. Use the ratio language to compare the number of celebrity stamps to the number of total stamps. And you guys should be able to do that, because You'll need to total the number of stamps and then just look at the number of celebrity stamps. And so you would just, it says use the ratio language. Well, it's just what we've been talking about here. You could write, 100, I'm just making one up, to 50, or you could write 100 to 50. All right, that's what they're talking about, as far as I'm concerned, when they say use ratio language. Okay, any questions on this, you guys? Okay, whoops, number 13.
Okay, so we're not doing 14?
Yeah, 14, I want you to do it. Okay,
The whole page of 196.
stop